Hello, I'm Frank Hartman with the Hartman Law Firm, and I'm a practicing attorney in Charleston, South Carolina, specializing in auto accidents and personal injury. And today we are answering the question, should you allow the police to search your automobile when you're pulled over by a policeman? The simple answer is no. This brings into question the actual Fourth Amendment, which we're going to, for our purposes and for documenting for history, I'm going to read to you. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Historically, the British, and this was obviously prior to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, had a habit of coming in and simply taking things or taking people. They didn't put it in front of a judge, and obviously it angered the American colonials, and that's part of the reason why you see this represented in the Constitution and in the body of the Fourth Amendment. As we've moved forward, and we're 230 years into the founding of America, and especially in the 20th century, a large part of the meaning of the Fourth Amendment has essentially been taken away. And by that I mean by precedents that have been issued by the Supreme Court, basically starting in the 20s right up into the present. And with each case and with each precedent, they carved out another exception to the Fourth Amendment that made it easier for police to move forward without a warrant, without probable cause. There's something called reasonable articulable suspicion, which is actually a lower standard than probable cause. And there's probably 50 or 60 cases. And when you combine those body of cases together over a period of 40 or 50 years, for the most part, the Fourth Amendment in large part really doesn't exist anymore. It exists on paper, and you can certainly still make arguments in a criminal court, but a lot of the protections that we enjoyed as Americans have been taken away. 80% of the time when a police officer asks someone, hey man, is it all right if I search your car? Just have a look around and make sure there's nothing in there. More often than not, because people are trying to cater to the police officer, they'll simply say yes. And in doing so, what they've done is they've waived their Fourth Amendment rights simply because they don't know their rights under the law. I would say something to the effect of yes, but, or if you want to be more, because you can actually limit the scope of whatever it is that they want to do. You could say, yes, but, I don't see any reason for you to actually go through my physical car. If you want to make a pass through with your flashlight, just to make sure that there's no weapons or anything, feel free to do so. You can actually limit the scope of the search that the officer wants to do. That's provided he doesn't already have reasonable articulable suspicion or probable cause. Why is this important to you? Well, there's also case law on the books that says that the Supreme Court and judges generally are not going to look to the subjective intent of the officer when he pulls you over. What does that mean? Well, there's a case in which the police very clearly pulled somebody over. They had a tail light out, which is a classic pretense for a police officer to pull somebody over. They pulled the guy over for a tail light, knowing full well that in all likelihood he had drugs in the car, and they used the tail light as the pretense for pulling him over because it was a technical violation of the law. It got him stopped on the side of the road and allowed them to pass their flashlight through his car and ultimately find whatever it was they were looking for. Interestingly enough, a flashlight in your car actually is not a search under the technical term of the Constitution, nor is a dog actually walking around the outside of your car. That's not considered a search under the Constitution either. The point is and some people disagree on it. I personally, I'm a civil libertarian in the sense that I think I read this, I take it literally, and I think that should be the letter of the law. The judges, however, set the law, the Supreme Court judges, and they set the precedent. And for purposes of essentially preserving evidence, the judges have allowed the automobile exception to essentially become the rule. The exception has superseded the rule, and the rule of law no longer exists. Because there's about 10 or 12 different exceptions that when you place them all together, when you're in an automobile, you have an extremely limited sense of what your Fourth Amendment protections actually are. It's only when you actually get into your home that the Fourth Amendment becomes more relevant, because the home and an automobile are two different things, and the reasoning behind it is the judges consider an automobile is mobile, and in that respect you could drive off with the evidence. And in large part, that is the reasoning behind all of these automobile exceptions and why you are subject to search when you're pulled over. Keep a civil tongue. You can say, "No, officer," or "Why is it that you want to search my car, officer? What's the reasoning behind it?" It's a very fine line that you're walking, because obviously you want to be polite, but you also want to let him know that you're informed of your rights. So, be diplomatic. And the important thing is don't waive your rights by immediately consenting like 80% of the people do. Because again, this also implies the Fifth Amendment. Now you're providing evidence against yourself to the prosecution and making prosecuting yourself easier to do. I'm Frank Hartman with the Hartman Law Firm, and today we answered the question, what is the Fourth Amendment, and should you allow an officer to search your car with your consent? If you have questions about the Fourth Amendment, automobiles or auto accidents, or law generally, I would encourage you to pick up the telephone and call me at 843-300-7600, or feel free to look me up at thehartmanlawfirm.com. Thanks for watching.